treacherous night ahead for Florida as darkness begins to fall.
The scope of the damage from this deadly hurricane has become painfully clear tonight.
Hey all, Sage Civilian here. I wanted to wish you all a happy and thankful end to the 2023 hurricane season. Thankfully, in my area of Southwest Florida, we didn't see too many big impacts. Little storms here and there, but nothing as bad as it was the previous year for Hurricane Ian. There was a couple storms in northern Florida, but thankfully nothing too bad. Let's hope it sticks around like that for a while. But today, I wanted to share with you my experience, some tips, and some helpful items that I found during my past few hurricanes, Irma, more specifically Ian, that hit last year. With Ian, thankfully my family was spared too much damage. My grandma did lose her entire condo, which sucks, but hey, free renovation. And then on top of that, because of my preparations I had for my immediate family, I think we were better off than most people, and we didn't have to worry as much during the ensuing power outage that we had for roughly 2 weeks. So today I wanted to start off and share with you the 10 items and 10 tips that I think are very useful, and let's get started. So I don't have any great visual items to hold for this next step, so I'm going to go ahead and show you some pictures that I found about this event. One thing that I think is really important for you to prep is a vehicle, or multiple vehicles if you have lots of family to travel, but one is probably preferable. Make sure for your vehicle that it is good and ready to go, so that makes sure you're kept up to date on your maintenance, oil, fluids, anything else that you have. Tires are especially important. Make sure that you have good headlights in your car. If you've got crappy, cheap headlights in your car that you can't see very far with, you're gonna have a really rough time navigating when there is absolutely no lights on, especially during a power outage after a natural disaster. Coming back from a shelter, we had to drive on the wrong side of the road in the median, over trees, through debris. Thankfully, we had good quality headlights. However, since then I upgraded to something a little bit more powerful. I think it's very useful to have a good set of headlights in your car. Make sure that when you're parked prior to the hurricane, the night of the actual event, during the hurricane, we thought we were going to ride it out in my parents' house. However, we decided at like 5 a.m. when the Hurricane Ian started turning towards us that we were going to evacuate to a local school for shelter. I'm thankful that we did. However, it was kind of a scary situation for especially a lot of my family. Make sure you have a case of water or a few. Chairs, like big, lawn chairs are very useful, especially if you sit in a shelter, they don't got chairs for you. Food, and then a bug out bag or some sort of hurricane preparedness bag, which I will go over in a future set of videos. Make sure that when you're driving to wherever you're going that you don't drive through flooding. If you're going to be driving through flooding, you could waterlock your engine. That happened quite a bit. Or flood your car. Even if it doesn't look very deep, it might be a lot deeper than you think, especially if there's been damage to the road. So be cautious, and even if you can, get out of your car and see where the road goes and see how quality it is before you drive through it. The next thing that I think is useful to have on hand, that you should always have on hand regardless, but especially during natural disaster scenarios like Hurricane Ian, is cash. If you have cash, I typically have around $500 cash in my safe at all times, and no denominations higher than $20 bills. Have small denominations. If you have a $100 bill, you may not be able to spend it. I'm sure people would take it from you, but you may not be able to spend it if it's something small. The price of things does change very drastically during hurricanes. If there's no water, then hey, water might be $1 a bottle, and that's just what you want to pay if you're not prepared ahead of time and you have to get things after the fact. I've also, since Hurricane Ian, started gathering up silver. These are 1 ounce silver coins. I have heard of people trading for items during hurricanes with silver. So much so, someone buying a pizza for a silver coin. That's a story for another time. However, I think it's important to have not too much of this. If you've got a monster box of $3,000 worth of silver, but nobody knows what the price of silver is, then you're kind of SOL. It just kind of looks pretty. So if you can, at all times have cash on you. Have at least a few $100s in small denominations. I had cash on hand during Hurricane Ian, and when we had to get a AC unit because ours broke, we traveled inland about 2 hours to a Badcock Furniture, because apparently they sell air conditioners. And on the way back, there was no, food places open near us. However, 2 hours inland, there was one Domino's open, and they were serving pizzas cash only. Nobody had cash, but man, I got me about 5 pizzas and a 2-liter of Coke, and I was ready to go. Brought that home to my family, and everybody was as happy as can be. So that's a good story and a good reason to keep cash on hand. Next thing I wanted to go over is water. I think prior to the storm, it's very important to stock up on water. Don't try getting water, 3 days out from the storm, 2 days out, 1 day out from the storm, the day of the storm. They're not going to have any. I'm going to flash some pictures for you so you can see that, even like local Publixes don't have any water. Everybody buys it up because they're freaking out. So if you have the means to, get a case of water, a gallon of water, and keep it on hand in your place of, like, your bug-in location, the place where you're staying, your home. Water store is pretty good. People say that it leaks, microplastics into the water. Well, maybe, but I would much rather be, satiated with water than, be too worried about a little bit of microplastic in there, or, making sure that you don't die of dehydration. Now, when you have water on hand, another way you can store them is in water containers. Reliance sells these water cubes. I think they're a really good quality option to store water on hand, and they're stackable. I wouldn't store water in them for long periods of time. However, if a storm is coming, go to your tub or your faucet and fill them up ahead of time. These can be found on Amazon, but I think easier way to get them is go to Walmart, and you can find those pretty easily. Another thing here I have is water filtration. If you run out of water and you can't get any, you'll be SOL. My preferred way to filter water is an MSR pump. I think it's like an EX Backcountry. These are like $100, but if you go on eBay and buy one used and then replace the filter, they're like $30 to $40, if that. These are really nice for, one person to filter water out of some pretty noxious scenarios. I think if you have a home and a place to put it, I'm in an apartment, so it's kind of hard. But if you have a place to put it, one of those big Berkey water filters is also very useful, and they go on sale pretty often. But one thing that I'm trying recently is this Sawyer Squeeze water filter. The regular Sawyer filters, they don't work all too well. I think they clog up really easily. However, the Sawyer Squeeze I've been trying out, and I think it's pretty good. One thing that's nice about the Sawyer Squeeze water filters is these can be found at Walmart. They're like $30. They fit right on smart water bottles. So if you want to drink directly out of the smart water bottle, you can. As you can see, I have a smart water cap on here because it's a little more comfortable to drink out of. Or you can even squeeze it out of the smart water bottle into another container. These work they save for life as long as you clean them and then back flush them. But I think a Sawyer Squeeze is definitely a good option, and you can find that pretty regularly, especially at Walmart. Most places have Walmart, even if you can't get Amazon service to you very quick. So these are a couple of good options. But if you can, have water on hand. You don't want to be worrying about water and filtering water when you really need it. So if you can have at least 1 gallon per person per day for at least 7 days or 2 weeks if preferable, then you're a lot better off than most people. The next thing I wanted to go over is food. That's a highly contested topic when it comes to preparation. A lot of people think, oh man, I'm going to stock up with 40 Mountain House meals. Or I'm going to buy a bunch of rations and I'll be good to go. I think that a variety of options is good. I think one thing that is really important is that if you have food, make sure, one, it's not something that takes refrigeration. You don't want to be using all your generator and all your power trying to keep a fridge full of bacon from freezing or from thawing out, especially if you're in a hurricane with no power where it's hot. I think it's something that you regularly eat. Things like soup, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, eggs, if you have the means to cook them, are really helpful. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, you could probably eat just peanut butter and jelly sandwiches the whole time and be fine. It doesn't take much refrigeration. As long as you have bread, jelly, and peanut butter, you're solid. I think it's also really important to not have things that require a lot of water. These require a lot of water that you could be drinking. Given the 1 gallon per person per day rule probably is enough for things like this. However, you have to have a means of ways to cook this. And also, if you don't usually eat these sort of things, they may not agree with you. So if you're, having a shitty time while you're on, without power during a natural disaster, and then you're gonna have an even shittier time after eating that, I would not suggest it. So things that you eat regularly that, like say canned goods, jarred goods, I think that these Star-Kissed or foil pack chicken or tuna are really good. I really like vegetable soup, Campbell's soup, you really can't go wrong with that. There's pre-made things like chicken salad, which is really useful. I think MREs are a very good thing to have on hand as well. These humanitarian daily rations, you can get a case of these for like 30 to 40 bucks. These don't taste great, but they're calories, they're nutrients. They don't have a flameless ration heater, so make sure that you have some way to cook that. I think first strike rations are a little bit, more preferable for most people. So if you can get MREs, those are good because they last for a long time. You don't have to cycle those out. But if you have things that you regularly eat on hand, you can just eat those after hurricane season and cycle out your preps. When it comes to cooking, I think there's a lot of really good ways. If you have a grill at home, whether that's propane or charcoal, you can use that as well. I'm going to flash on screen a Coleman stove, which I think is really the best option for a lot of people that just need one burner. They take these butane fuels, which you can get cheap at Walmart, or they sell them in big packs at like Sam's Club, BJ's, Costco, which are, a little bit easier. And you also have things like these little camping stoves. These camping stoves can be used, they probably can be used indoors. I would suggest maybe being careful so you don't tip them over and burn something, but these can be had for relatively cheap. I think this BRS stove was something like 16 bucks. And this is what people use when they're camping out in the woods. These are good options. Just make sure you know how to use it, and then you have a fire extinguisher nearby if you're going to be using this indoors. The next thing to have on hand is lighting. If there is no power for a week, 2 weeks, a month, hopefully it never gets to that point, you're going to be very excited to have something where you can see. It's going to be dark a lot of the time, and when there's no power in a city, it gets really dark. I thankfully have night vision, which I can go into that in a later video. However, I think if you have some flashlights on hand, it really helps out. If the only flashlights you can get are cheap flashlights from Walmart, say a mag light, that's a whole lot better than nothing, especially a phone flashlight will drain your battery very quickly. Mag lights have been very dependable for years. If you can get an LED mag light, and other than anything else, do it. Just make sure you have extra batteries. However, I think the most useful thing to have on hand is one of these Luminade lanterns. This is a solar lantern that they have on Amazon. It's like 30 bucks. These charge outside when it's sunny out, and then when it's not sunny, this produces more than enough light, even at the lowest setting, which is that, for doing necessary tasks inside your house. And this has a pretty high runtime. It also has SOS as well. These blow up, so you can blow it up here and make it a lot bigger so it disperses light easier. But these are a very dependable option if you don't have too much light inside your home. I would recommend these to every single person that does prepping. If you don't have any light, at least have something like this on hand. Another good option is a LED lantern. You can have things like Coleman lanterns, but an LED lantern is going to be a heck of a lot brighter. As you can see, this is incredibly bright. This is something you can get from Harbor Freight. This one, I haven't really tested this one so much, so I can't say whether it's good or not. It seems fine. However, that really comes up to if this is actually high quality when I test it. I think this is also like a battery bank as well. I don't know how much I trust that, but it is certainly, an option. I think another good option to have is high quality flashlights. This is a Streamlight flashlight, which is what I primarily used during the last hurricane season. It has 2 modes, low and high. This is one of their ProTech series. It uses a rechargeable battery. So if you have a generator or battery banks, you could recharge these. However, this also uses CR123A batteries, which are kind of expensive, but they're pretty reliable. And then there's also options like, this is Phoenix. Highly recommend this brand as well. This is a headlamp that's rechargeable, very useful for doing things without using your hands. Another Phoenix flashlight, and then glow sticks. I think glow sticks are nice. I wouldn't say this is your primary source of lighting. However, this is nice to crack and then keep by your bedside, in your bathroom, especially if you have elderly or older adults such as your parents or kids. It's nice to have a light that just kind of stays on overnight. And even though this says 12 hours, these typically run at least a little bit for up to 24 hours in my experience. So make sure you have a good quality light, flashlight, lantern, and especially a solar lantern is a really good way to go. Next thing to talk about is power. I think a lot of things are useful for power, and you can have power in many different options. I think one thing that I have that is very useful, I have one for each of my parents, I have one in my car, I have one in pretty much every one of my primary backpacks, bug out bags, is an Anchor power bank. They make power banks. This is like a cheap one they got free from T-Mobile. I actually got this after the hurricane when T-Mobile was handing out free phones to people. I didn't need a free phone, thankfully, but I did need a power bank, which was useful. I highly trust the Anchor brand. These typically go for like $16 on Amazon, and I've had this for years. This will charge up your phone, I think they've said like 3 or 4 times. However, I pretty much continuously topped off my phone as needed. Make sure you have on hand the cables you need ready to go. Power bank, I think that's really useful. Other options are a solar generator, especially if you're in Florida. Plenty of sun. They're a little bit more expensive than gas generators, and you do need pretty direct sunlight to produce an ample amount of power. I wouldn't think that, unless you want to spend quite a bit of money, if you want to power your fridge or anything, I don't think that's as feasible than a gas generator, but it's kind of give and take. Unless you have a solar panel set up in your house, then that's really nice. That's a good way to go. Generators are very useful. If you get a generator, make sure it's an inverter generator, something that has a clean sine wave coming out. I've personally used the Champion brand quite a bit. Generac is also good. I think there's like another one like AG or I'd have to look it up. But the Champion brand is something I use. I personally have a Champion generator. I live in an apartment. I don't think I'm supposed to be having a generator on top of my patio, but the less they know, the better, I suppose. I'd rather be prepared. The Harbor Freight, her Predator brand is also pretty good. But please note that just like I was talking about with your car, you may not be able to get gas. If you have your fridge running the whole time, or maybe an AC unit, which is really useful, especially in the hot times of Florida, that draws a lot of power. I think generator is a good thing to have, but you don't want to be running it all the time. There's also security risk with people stealing generators. We did have looters during Hurricane Ian come do that near my area. Thankfully, I had mine chained up, and I was defending myself with all sorts of firearms, so I didn't have to worry about that too much. I think if you have a generator, get gas ahead of time. And don't wait in lines for gas. There was people like getting in fistfights over gas after the 3rd day. So please make sure that you're prepared ahead of time so you don't have to be doing any sort of that. And please don't get in fistfights over gas. That seems like a really bad way to go to jail. I think the next thing that's really important is to have some sort of radio or a way to communicate. One thing that a lot of people don't think of is that you can use your car's radio, given it didn't get washed away by a flood or rising, storm surges, to see, local radio stations, what's up, what's going on. It's important to have a radio because if the National Guard or FEMA assistance is going on, if you don't have cell service, which probably you won't, you don't have any way to hear if there's free food, there's free water, there's medical assistance nearby. So having a hand crank radio on hand is really very useful. This one is pretty cheap. This is a hand crank radio. I got it off Amazon. This one is currently out of stock everywhere. I don't think they make it anymore. This one's fine. This one.
Point 1.
Let's see if I
Key West. It was partly cloudy with a temperature.
you're getting some NOAA bands.
With a temp-
This has NOAA bands, FM, AM radio, as well as this can be used as a battery bank as well. Go on Amazon, find one. Midland ones are nice. Just make sure it's hand crank so you can power it up, as well as solar. I didn't really hand crank this radio too much. The solar panel was more than enough for me. However, we did use this quite a bit. It was entertainment, as well as it was also nice to figure out what was going Another thing to have on hand is to have a radio. I think the Baofeng is like the burner phone for ham radio enthusiasts. I do have a Woshin radio, which is pretty good as well. However, most people are going to start with a Baofeng. One thing that's important, have your local repeaters, as well as have your local amateur radio club, your radio nerds, have their repeaters as well. During the hurricane, all the local county repeaters, including the EOC, which is the Emergency Operations Center, went offline. My father was actually at my parents' house. He stayed, thankfully. He made sure the house was all right, and I'm thankful he was there, and I'll go into that later. But he was able to hear on one of the local ham radio band, like nerd bands, I guess I'll call it the amateur radio like club, had his repeater up the whole time. After the hurricane, we also did check-ins. I have a technician's license for using radios, so I was able to check in. I had some camaraderie there already. However, I think it's really important that you know how to use this. I'll be doing a video on Baofengs for hurricane preparedness at some point in time, but make sure to have your local repeaters as well as your local, ham radio club repeaters, because those are more likely to be up. This also can get, where is it? Like FM radio. If you like country music, that is. Which is also very useful. Same thing as this. However, these batteries have to be charged via the wall, which can be done by a generator, solar generator, or even power banks if you have these type of batteries. Well as that, I think a GPS is really nice. This one has the Garmin InReach service through the GPS Map 66i. These communicate via satellite, and also the new iPhone 14 and 15 also can communicate via satellite. So if you need to tell people, hey, the dog got washed away or everything's all right, that's a good way to do it as well. So these are some good options for people to have on hand. Make sure you have a hand crank radio. Make sure you have a Baofeng. The next thing I want to talk about is security. Various different things here, but I think one thing that's really important is have your home secured. Whether that's shutters, hurricane-ready windows, wood over your windows. Make sure you get that ahead of time. If you know the storm is coming, make sure you put your shutters up way before the storm. Even if it doesn't look like it's going to hit, if you got some chance that it might hit, if you're in the cone at least a little bit, put up your shutters. They're pretty easy if you have them. Wood, if you can get that way ahead of time, wood is kind of expensive, and TAPCONs do run out pretty much instantly as soon as the store comes in. If you don't know what a TAPCON is, it's a blue screw that's made for concrete and like masonry work. One thing I found is that oftentimes the front doors of buildings are not well prepared for hurricanes. My dad actually had to tie them together with zip ties and then around a kitchen island to make sure our doors didn't blow in, because they were blowing in with the Category 5 Hurricane Ian when it came through. I think a really good option is to secure your doors with extra locks. I'll put some images in here of things that I think are very useful. So make sure your home is secured. Another thing to have on hand, binoculars. You don't have to buy really nice fancy Steiner binoculars. If you can go on Amazon and find some cheap Bushnells, or I often really suggest going to thrift stores and just finding binoculars there that work. These are really helpful to see, your area, to look out for police, EMS, looters, unfortunately. Good thing to have is binoculars. Make sure you can survey your area well, and it's really good to also see what's ahead of you if you're driving. Now this is most definitely an airsoft gun for YouTube. It's all clear. So this is a representation for having some sort of way to defend yourself. During states of emergency, I do not believe Florida sells firearms and ammo. If you're legally able to buy a firearm, which hopefully you are, hopefully you're not doing anything crazy, do that. Make sure you're safe and you understand how to use them. Practice with them. I think this is a good representation, whether you have an AR-15 or a handgun. Make sure you can carry it safely. During a state of emergency in Florida, you can also, from my understanding, legally conceal carry a firearm, and now you can conceal carry a firearm in Florida generally. Just check with your local laws before you do so. But carry a firearm. People are crazy. The first night of the storm, we actually had looters stealing something across the street from us, and we were able to chase them away with a flashlight. But you're damn well sure that I had a firearm on me and pointed in their general direction. I did contact the police via the Coast Guard and cell service. I was able to contact them, and they relayed a message that we had looters in the area. And then a couple squad cars came. They were totally fine with me. I had a rifle, a chest rig, and a helmet on. They were totally fine. When they came through, they said some funny things, which I'm not going to repeat. But eventually the looters did get caught and apparently arrested later the next couple of days trying to break into a local store. So please be prepared. Please make sure you're safe. Another thing that I think is really useful is to have a drone. You may not be able to use these because of geofencing, but I really wish I had a drone ahead of time to scout the locations that we were going when we were driving, as well as to assess damage on your home. These can be used for Overwatch. The batteries don't last all that long, so make sure to have quite a few, and these discharge, so make sure they're charged ahead of time. But I think a drone is a really good option, and you can look at various different ways. This is the DJI Mavic Mini 2, I think, I don't know. But you can get them pretty cheap now, and I think it's a good thing to have on hand. The next thing that I think is very important for prepping is going to be first aid. Hopefully, you all don't take any sort of medications to keep you alive, such as insulin, any sort of antipsychotic medication. But if you do, make sure ahead of time to contact your doctor and your local pharmacy to get medication ahead of time. If you have the capability to do so, you can buy pre-made Adventure Medical, Refuge Medical first aid kits. However, you can easily make a first aid kit to have on hand for various things like drugs, band-aids. Super glue is really important for closing up wounds. A basic first aid kit is nice to have on hand. I would have something more comprehensive at the place where you're choosing to stay or in your plug-out bag. Hopefully you won't have to deal with any sort of trauma, so whether you need a tourniquet or if you need a combat bandage or hemostatic gauze. I'll cross my fingers for you on that. But one thing I think is really important to have is anti-diarrheal medication. If you're eating food, like I recently talked about, that you don't really do very often or doesn't agree with you, you don't want to be losing all your water intake and dehydrating yourself through, having diarrhea. So make sure you have anti-diarrheal medication, as well as things like aspirin, Aleve. My father actually, unfortunately, had to get a stint recently. And during the hurricane, I had aspirin on hand so I could help alleviate him and make sure that he wasn't having a heart attack or anything. Thankfully, he didn't, but he was pretty close, and that was kind of scary. So having that on hand was really very helpful. I think on top of that, you don't want to get sunburnt. If you're out trying to fix your house or clear up debris, you're going to get sunburnt. I unfortunately did get really badly sunburnt last time I was in a hurricane because I was outside for multiple hours during the day cleaning up debris and helping people. So make sure you have sunscreen on hand as well. And the final item and tip to have on hand is a plan. Have a plan. Have a plan and make sure that it's solid, it's understood by all members of your family, and that you share it with loved ones or friends that are nearby. With a plan, whether that's a plan to have the ability to financially purchase all the things you need, food, water, shelter, security, firearms, a drone, whatever that may be, have a plan. Plan out ahead of time when you're going to get food, when you're going to get water, where you're going to go, when you're going to go to a shelter. Have that plan ready. There's plenty of options on YouTube to go and discuss hurricane planning. I could make a video of it in the near future if need be, but make sure you know where your nearest shelter is. Know what evacuation zone you're in. Heed the warnings of the evacuations, especially for those on the islands near us who basically, lots of people died, unfortunately, because they were on the islands. They said, oh, it's not going to be that bad. It was a lot worse than the people were saying. They should have over-prepared, and they did not. And unfortunately, they suffer the consequences. But if you prepare ahead of time, you get plenty of food, you get plenty of water, and you make sure that you're ready for any sort of situation, whether that's reading a book like this, which is very helpful for a lot of situations. Watching videos on YouTube, I think, is very useful, or generally just asking around about things you can do. If you have a plan ahead of time of how you're going to prepare, what you're going to do, and how you're going to make sure you're safe after the storm, you can be better prepared for any sort of situation you face. If you all have any questions, please let me know. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of 2023 and a happy holidays, and I thank you all for watching. This is Sage Civilian out.